Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our test speaker, Randy Mouse. Don't poke your eye out, make time meaningful. Don't poke your eye out, make time meaningful. Randy Mouse.
Please stand if you have ever attended a meeting. If you're not able to stand, or you choose not to, please just raise your hand. Please remain standing if you have ever attended a meeting and you wish you had never attended. Okay, so we're in the same place. Thank you very much. I once had a colleague a number of years ago. Her name was Heather. She was a go-getter, hard charger. She got things done, and she liked to achieve things. But her biggest bane was going to meetings. She would go to meetings and she would experience the talk, and a whole lot of nothing came out of that. Or she'd go and maybe you'd have one person at the front. Instead of everybody talking, you got one person. Hey, I think I'm great. This is a great idea. What do you think about this idea? It doesn't matter. I like this idea because my idea. Either way, she was very frustrated because nothing came out of those meetings. It wasn't clear what happened. So there's no clarity, there's no sense of action or accountability. And it got me thinking, a lot of people are frustrated by what happens in meetings. But there's got to be a better way to run or facilitate a meeting in which people can feel engaged and feel like their time has been well spent. You know, the title of my speech actually comes from Heather because she would come back and she would say, that meeting was such a waste of time. I wanted to poke my eye out because it would have been less painful. So to make it less painful, I found there are 3 simple questions to ask and 3 basic skills that go along with them. And using them together makes every meeting a lot better. People feel more productive and like it's more meaningful and a greater use of their time. So first, we've got to ask, what are we doing? Then we've got to think about, when does this need to be done? And finally, who is going to do this? If we can answer those 3 things, we're much further down the road. So let's start with, what are we doing? Is anybody surprised to know that most people who leave a meeting, well, I'll say quite often when people leave a meeting, they have no idea what they're supposed to do. Has anybody in here felt that? I know I certainly have. And that's because one basic technique that people don't use is a technique that we use very simply one-on-one. If I'm talking to Gord, we call it empathy. Gord tells me everything, and I just repeat it back to him. And what does that do for him? It says I'm listening. With a group, I call it summarizing. Instead of a one-on-one discussion, we are having a 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people discussion. And there's a lot said in that time frame. So it's important to summarize so that we can be all on the same page. It shows that I am listening to what has been said, and it also helps everyone have clarity so we can move together towards a positive outcome. So once we know what we're doing, that's important. We know what needs to be done. I have seen people do amazing things when there is a deadline. Have you ever seen people, or perhaps yourself, before you're going on vacation, you've gotten more done in your business, or at your work, or to organize your family, around the house, whatever chores you have, than you have in probably 2 weeks combined. Because there's a hard deadline to get those things done by. And it may surprise you, that is the number one thing that is forgotten or overlooked when people make a request of someone. And it doesn't matter whether it's, hey, let's go for coffee, or can I get that draft? We leave it open, and therefore the chances of it happening are very low. So if we have a deadline, it lets people know when they need to operate by. If we have those 2 things, and those things are very important, we need one last component that brings it all together. And every project, every project, activity, initiative, whatever you have that you're trying to work on or achieve, it's got a life of its own, and it needs to have life breathed into it. You know, it's always got a heartbeat of life. Every project has a heart behind it. And that heart is someone who is assigned take that project and move it forward. Someone who has accountability to say, I will bring a life. You know, I will do my Dr. Frankenstein. Live! And will be the heart of that project. But you know the saddest thing is when our heart stops beating, what happens? We die. And what's even sadder to me is most projects don't even have a chance to have a beating heart because they're not assigned someone to do that. So it's very important that someone is there to give that project life, to be the heart and the soul and the cheerleader and what is needed to move that forward. So whether it's a community meeting or you're in front of a boardroom or consulting with clients, it really doesn't matter. If you have people in there that you report to or people that report to you, it doesn't matter. If you do these three things, if you ask, what are you doing? And then summarize that conversation for the group. If you say, when does it need to be done? And you set a firm timeline on that. And finally, if you assign someone to be accountable, so you know who is going to get that done, you will have great success and your meetings will be much more productive, powerful, and purposeful.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like the contestants to please leave. They will follow part of the group. I'm sorry, you didn't want to join the group. Some quiet, and our contestants won't be able to hear us that one as well. They will have 5 minutes in order to make notes, and then they will come back one at a time in order to give their feedback to our contestant or to our test speaker, Randy. Please welcome Randy back up. I think I needed a step ladder.
We can make it work.
No. Well, thanks for your speech. I want to ask a few questions, and I wrote some of them down based on the information he had sent us ahead of time. For starters, you're a leadership coach, and he has actually led 2 major accomplishments when it comes to disasters in Alberta. What do you want to tell them about it?
So I feel out very privileged. In 2013, was anyone here for the floods? Excellent. And in 2016, we had the wildfires up north, and some people may have been affected. I was working at the university at the time, and I had the pleasure of leading the team that was able to provide emergency housing for folks in both those emergencies. And it was quite special. You know, we're used to providing student housing and an amazing experience when we're doing that. And here we're providing emergency housing and trying to provide a safe, stable, calm place for people to come who maybe have lost their homes, their possessions. Thankfully, no loved ones were lost. But a pretty emotional time. It was a very neat time to come together with the city, with some various agencies, and all come together serving those people. You know, it was very, if I may share just briefly, we had someone who came with us in the wildfires, and he and his family came down, and he purposely sought me out one day, and he gave me this bag of Hershey Kisses, and he said, you know, I know you've been, one of these people helping organize, put this together for us, and I just, please, can you just take my thanks? I'm so appreciative. I've got these for you guys, and can you share them with the team? And it was very moving, because I realized for him, This may have been all he could afford, all he could do. This may have stretched him in that moment too, but it was important for him to say thank you and to show his appreciation for the group. It was very touching to see someone in such a period of distress still be appreciative for things that we were just taking for granted to provide.
Right, well, that's the first question.
Long-winded? I could shorten that.
Oh, no. You see, he wrote on his little bio that he's lived in Calgary and in, I'm not doing it for a quarter guessing, Edmonton. Tell us which one's better and why.
I get asked that question all the time. And I always say both cities have been tremendously good for me and my family. We've had great experiences, great people. Calgary, I have wonderful people here like you. And I'm sure if I was a Toastmasters up there, there'd be wonderful people up there too.
Careful.
But I will say I'm one of the rare people who can kind of root for Calgary and Edmonton and do that honestly. Although starting to lean a little towards Calgary, we've lived here longer now. So
That's always fun. Well, seems you have done some pretty impressive things. What is your the closest accomplishment to you when it comes to how wonderful you feel for the one item that you've done?
Wow. So I have done a lot of training for folks. And I was working at the University of Alberta in Edmonton. You can hear those words? And what was really special to me was often we do our work and we have no idea of the impact we've had. No idea of the lives we've touched or what we've done for folks. And so we had done our training program, and what was very special for me were messages that I had started training people on 1 to 2 years later. I was starting to hear filtered down to the lowest level, and people were starting to use them, which was scary because I'm like, wow, people are listening. And I hope what I said didn't mess them up, but that was very powerful to think we organized this well, the messages are strong, and they're useful to people in the work that they're doing.
Now, before you go, I think we all need to know at least the answer to one question. Well, maybe two. What club are you from? It's nice and easy.
Thank you. I am with the Regulators Club. We meet at downtown in the National Energy Board.
Okay, one woo, that was it?
Regulators!
All right. And how long have you been a member?
Since October.
Oh, that's fantastic. Contestant 1, Shelley Muska. Shelley Muska, contestant
1. Toastmasters, judges, ladies and gentlemen, and especially Randy, thank you for your speech. Meaningful time, what a great topic, applicable to everyone. I'm going to give you my MVP evaluation this evening. The memorable part of the speech, the V's, the variations that I'll give you for next time, and the P's are the positives, what I thought you did very well. The memorable parts for me was I love a speaker that's very easy to follow, 3 points, and very clear descriptives of those 3 points. Excellent. Didn't lose me from start to finish. The heart beating and the life, the big L, caught me looking at you, and I was mesmerized. I was right there with you. It had me there for sure. I really enjoyed those parts of the speech. For the variations, I just wanted to say at the beginning, it's really difficult. The staging can be difficult sometimes. You're very tall. I'm the opposite. But if we tap, in my opinion, if we come a little too close, especially for tall, it's a little intimidating for the people up front. So my suggestion would be perhaps one step back, and then this space here would have been a little more comfortable for yourself and for the audience. Try that next time. At the beginning, it was either the hands up or the stand up. So either let us know, sometimes it's confusing, so we always need the keys from the speaker. If you want our hands up, or you did it right, Randy puts his hand up. That's what you want us to do. It's hard to show people how to stand up when you're already standing, so just give us clear information and always tell the audience, please sit down when you're ready for them to sit down. I found that you had comfortable hands, but I found it was mostly like this, very close to the sides, and you had busy hands. But what I really need you to do is really work on lowering those hands down and maybe getting them away from the body. Really makes those gestures come to life. What I really enjoyed was right away the title. I poked my eye and it hurts. Have you ever done that? And then you said time's meaningful. So I was really interested right away in what you were going to talk to us about. You had those 3 strong points that you went through, easy to understand, and at the end, very strong conclusion. 3 points again. You gave us the 3 points and recapped the instructions with the 3 points. You told us if we used them, it would be a great success. And then you ended with the 3 P's. I didn't get all those P's down, but it was a strong ending for sure. I did like your clear voice, your diction, and your eye contact. For me, love tips. And I think if you use some of these variations, and with your memorable, your variations, and the positive, it'll be your great success.
Please give me 1 minute of silence from the judge's name. Contestant 2, Christina Cruz. Christina Cruz, contestant 2.
Fellow Toastmasters, and especially you, Randy, thank you for being the heartbeat of our meeting tonight. If you weren't here, we wouldn't have had a contest, and we appreciate you being here. There's lots of things I want to share with you, share with everybody. I'm going to have a toolbox. We're going to talk about your words, your structure, your voice, and your body. And you did most of those tremendously well this evening. I loved your start. Please stand up if you've ever attended a meeting. Well, did you get Toastmasters in the palm of your hand? Because Toastmasters do meetings. It was an awesome start and very clear what your structure was going to be. You had some very descriptive phrases, and I really enjoyed the way that you gave us some interesting ideas. You described Heather as a go-getter, a charger. You talked about accountability and people being engaged in a meeting. All really important words for this audience to hear. I liked your expression and how you explained the title, Poke My Eye Out. That would have been less painful. And I think there's some stuff that maybe you could have done with that. Your structure was very clear. What, when, who. And it was easy for us to follow that you were giving us some tips on how to make meetings better. Your summary was very clever with productive, powerful, and purposeful. Using the 3 P's, I love that. Your voice from the very start was very clear, very strong, and extremely confident. There was one time when you really used some vocal variety. I will bring it to life, live, like Dracula. And I think maybe to incorporate some of that throughout your speech would have been even more interesting for us. So you could have shown some contrast on that person with a lot of accountability and heartbeat and boring, we don't have an agenda, but we're all here for a meeting. So you might have used some contrast to even show the benefits of how much better when I wanted to live works. Your actions were good. You had hand puppets. You didn't really use voices with them, and that might have been another opportunity for vocal variety. You used a cupped ear. You showed your wrist. There was lots of really good gestures, and one of the things that I might suggest is you may have used your stage better. You started talking here, and then you talked here, and then you talked here. A little bit of ping pong. And obviously you had 3 points. When, who, what, when, and who. And you might have talked to this side of the audience on your first point about how to make a good meeting, second and third. So I think if you had used that, it would have been more specific as far as how you might have used your body. Your contrast in your voice and maybe using the staging could have made your speech a little more engaging. Your ending might have been something like, be the heartbeat of your next meeting. And that would have been a direct call to action for people to jump into taking your advice into their next meeting, which all of us are going to have. I love your advice. You hit this audience bang on. And we really appreciate Randy being our heartbeat this evening. Thank you.
Again, 1 minute. Contestant 3, Russ Dantu. Russ Dantu, contestant 3.
Madam Contest Toastmaster, ladies and gentlemen, and especially our new friend, Randy. Thank you very much for sharing a wonderful speech with us tonight. And what I liked about it right off the bat was your title. It was something completely different, so it drew us in right away. So I thought that was very well done. If you can come up with an effective title, you're ahead of the game already. You've got people thinking, what is this going to be about? I like that you dressed for success tonight. You dressed very well, and it showed. You were very confident up here as a speaker. And very well organized and good flow to your speech. And you gave us some practical ideas that we could take away right away and put into use right away. So we learned something tonight. And I thought that was really well done, because in 5 to 7 minutes, it's not always possible to convey ideas that we can use right away. So well done on that. I've got a few ideas for you that will help with the next presentation, and hopefully we'll see you again back here at MVP. When you were introduced tonight, you came up here right away and you started talking. Our Toastmaster had not even sat down yet. So my suggestion would be, is just to wait until she sits over there, take a deep breath, look around at the room, smile, and then get into the speech. Because what that does, that little bit of silence, will give everybody, if they weren't quite paying attention, they are now. It's like, oh, everything's on silent. What's happening here? So then it draws them in and the focus is on you. So that's the first tip I would give you. The other thing I noticed, although you had very good vocal variety in your voice, some of your sentence seems to tail off towards the end. And I noticed that quite a bit tonight. You'd be telling us something and it was really important, and then it just sort of, the last few words seemed to taper off a little bit. So keep the volume up, especially if you've got something important to say that we need to hear. The other thing, with eye contact too, I thought it was very good. You were working the room, you were all over the place, you were really good, but it was like this. It was a little bit almost too fast as you were going around, in my humble opinion. Whereas, if you're going to look at somebody, look at them for a couple of seconds, and when you're moving on, hopefully they don't make eyes at you like that. But then maybe you look over here, and you look, and then you go to the next person, and you go back to the room, and you do that. So you focus on a person for just a little bit longer. It shows a better connection, and they feel like you're talking to them directly. You had a really interesting activity to start. Everybody up on your feet. And interesting activities are great to get us drawn in, and audience participation is wonderful, and I'm glad you did it a few times, which was good. The only thing was, I wasn't sure what the point of the activity was, and maybe I missed it. But it was like, if we're going to do an activity, there has to be a specific reason why we're doing it. Otherwise, it can sometimes get lost, and your audience member might start wandering in their mind going, okay, why did we do that? Did I miss something? So just something to be careful of there. I loved your confidence up here. You stood in your power very well. You moved around well. You had great hand gestures. And you had a really good connection with the audience. So I thought that was very strong. So in summary, I would just say, wait for your Toastmasters to sit down. Make sure you finish your sentences at the same level. And other than that, I thought it was great. Thank you very much.
Contestant 4, Dave Burns. Dave Burns, contestant 4.
Randy, thanks for your speech, and it would be remiss of me to evaluate a speech about meetings without giving you an agenda on what we're going to talk about right now. First of all, what are we doing? We're going to give you some feedback, tell you what you did well, some improvements you can make on the speech. When's the deadline? I got 3.5 minutes or I'm out of the competition. Finally, accountability. It's all on me, then it's up to you to take it and improve your speech from there. What I wanted to kick off with is what I felt was a real strong point for Randy. Randy had relatable examples. There was an example to all 3 of his points, and I felt like everything that Randy was talking about, we were able to put ourselves in those shoes. First of all, really easy hit, frustrating meetings. No one here, I could believe, hasn't been in a frustrating meeting, or a meeting that just went nowhere. So automatically, we're already nodding, we're on Randy's side. So I really like that. Another one, talking about deadlines, could have just simply spoken about the fact we've got this much time, let's set it, everybody's work to a deadline. It gave us another really relatable piece here with talking about when you're getting ready to go to a holiday, you've got a bunch of work and there's no way you're missing out on that holiday, so you power on through. So again, plenty of these examples all the way through that allowed us to put ourselves in the shoes of the speaker and think about how we might want to do things in the future. One thing I'd like to throw out here is to take it to the next step from these relatable examples. I'd like to see some stories, some personal stories in there. Now, you spoke about Heather at the start and how Heather really hated pointless meetings or meetings that rambled on. And then you brought it back to how that made you feel. And I felt there was a little bit of a disconnect going from Heather's experience and your feelings towards that. So I would have liked to have heard an example from your own experience about a frustrating or pointless meeting to really wrap it up. Another thing we can do there is, what's an example of you leading a meeting? Really put us with you, tell a personal story. Now the final piece I want to touch on were gestures and the use of space. Now, Randy had some good gestures. When he's talking about time, he's got this. He also was very open with his gestures, expansive, which I liked. Another thing, he used people as props. He didn't just move himself around, he moved people around. He got us up. I felt like I was in a meeting because I had to stand up and play along to his strings. So I really liked that. He also moved around, approached people, which was great. So to wrap up, I really like the relatable way that you gave us examples. Take it to the next level. Give us some stories to really get the emotion and put us in there. And keep going with those gestures, keeping expansive and welcoming, and the speech will keep on getting better. Thank you.
We'll have a minute of silence. Contestant 5, Teresa Merrifield. Teresa Merrifield, contestant 5.
Fellow MVP members, and especially Randy, what an honor for me to be able to evaluate you. I have some tips for you, and I have some obvious points on where you've done extremely well. I'll start with one of the things that I love. I love your image. And I think as speakers, it's really important for us to pay attention to our image. And the reason for that is if you expect to be paid as a speaker, you have to look like a speaker. You have to look like you own the room. And let's segue owning the room. As you were introduced and stood up, you started speaking before Joanne sat down. Try not to do that because it tempers with you owning the room. And this is for all of us. You want to be front and center. You want to be the main attraction. And so wait for the whoever's introducing you to sit down. That makes you the owner. You have great presence. I think you've been up at the front of a room before, commanding the attention of the audience. And I thought that you were extremely well prepared. one of the things that I think that I would help you out with is in your eye contact, you tend to skim. When you're thinking, you tend to stop the skim and not focus on anybody individually. What you might like to do, just try the next time you're playing with an audience, is make eye contact as you go around the room so that you feel like you're connecting with the people in the room and they feel like they're connecting with you as well. Let's talk about your hands. You have great shoulder to waist gestures. You use all of your gestures between here and here, and you have great natural ability to command the use of your hands, your elbows, your shoulders. You're very good here. Your resting posture is here. You protect your solar plexus. And so that might be something to think about as you move forward. Play a little bit with that as well. Love the content of your speech. What are we doing? And then summarize it. So I like that you asked a question and then you answered the question. You gave us the how-to, moved us forward that way. When are we doing it? Giving it a timeline, and who is doing it, having the accountability piece. It was really well structured. Eye contact, covered, check. Very relatable, loved your topic. I thought that was very, very well done. And I love the clarity at which you master your speech. You were very productive, powerful, and purposeful. Excellent close. I thought you did that really well. Madam Toastmaster.
Contestant 6, Susan Kramer. Susan Kramer, contestant 6.
Randy, thank you. What a lovely speech tonight. It's always a pleasure to be able to come to a meeting and actually learn something that I can take away and use myself. So thank you very much for sharing tonight. My job as an evaluator is to do 3 things. I'm going to first of all highlight what I think Randy did really well, and then I'm going to suggest, in my humble opinion, some things that are room for improvement for him. And then I'm going to conclude with what I think was the highlight of his speech. So first of all, probably the most prevalent thing for me, Randy, was the way that you kept polling us. As an audience, you polled us a number of different ways. You started right at the very beginning of the speech by having us stand, which immediately engaged us by asking a question that made us physically use our bodies, and immediately the blood was flowing and we were right there with you and excited and ready to take part in this presentation. If you'd been speaking right after a meal, you'd have had everybody wide awake, and those stomachs that were digesting, all of that blood would have flowed up to the head and the heart and where it needed to be to incorporate your speech. On top of that, you asked repeatedly numerous questions. For example, have you ever? You asked us if we'd felt a certain way a number of times. That constant polling and checking to make sure that we were listening and engaged was absolutely brilliant. In terms of areas where I think there is a potential for improvement, it's all around the way that you used your body. I would like to have seen more. I would have liked to have seen more movement on the stage. I would like to have seen bigger, more expansive gestures. It felt to me like your elbows were anchored right into your body, and it was difficult sometimes for you to get those big gestures that you needed. One example specifically was when you were talking about a life of its own. You actually used a gesture that was quite small and tight to your body. I would have preferred that circular world motion to have been much bigger. And if you were actually speaking in front of a larger audience in a bigger room, that would have been a critical element to make sure that those gestures were large and expansive. Another example was when you talked about a life of its own and Dr. Frankenstein. Again, you swept a little bit in front of your body when you brought those hands up and around, but I would like to have seen that be a much more expansive, larger gesture. I'm going to conclude with what I thought you did absolutely brilliant. And for me, I have a thing for words and language and the way that things are used, and you were a master of triad tonight. You used it both in the technique where you told us what you were going to tell us, you told us, and then you told us what you told us. That's a triad, and it's also the classic speech formation. that you also did it in your speech content by telling us about 3 simple questions that you were going to answer for us. So in conclusion, Randy, thank you so much. What a lovely speech, and I hope I get to hear you again.
Contestant 7, Jocelyn Hasty. Jocelyn Hasty, contestant 7.
Randy, wonderful speech. I loved the metaphors you used, heart and soul in particular. And what I loved even more was the gestures that you used to make the metaphors come alive. What I would have loved to have seen a little more of was movement not just from side to side right here, which you did quite a bit of, but a little more towards the sides of the room. And I also noticed that you seem to favor these guys right here. I think maybe they showered and the rest of us didn't, because these guys on this side got less attention and I really felt kind of left out at the back there. So for my liking, I would have liked to have seen you interact more with everybody. I keep going back to those gestures though, really, really outstanding. Your summarization, your conclusion was clear, it was easy to follow. The layout of the speech was very nice, your transitions were good. I would have liked to have had a more specific call to action. You had excellent content, but you didn't challenge us to do something. You didn't challenge us to examine what it was you were saying and where we might be having some downfalls, to really concentrate on what we might be able to do. And I would have liked to have had your vocal variety match the precision of your gestures. Your gestures were so good that if you had had your vocal variety keep up to the gestures, I really think it would have been outstanding. In summary then, the very best things about your speech, from my perspective, the gestures for sure. Really, really outstanding. And your facial expressions matched your gestures, but your vocal variety was not in keeping with how expressive the other things were. Your content was useful and well organized and specific to this audience and useful to us. Really, overall, excellent speech, and I look forward to hearing from you again and seeing you speak on other occasions. And I'm hoping you're going to consider this club, Randy. I think this is a place you belong. Thank you.
Contestant 8, Mark Kolke. Mark Kolke, contestant 8.
Thank you, Madam Contest Chair, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Toastmasters, judges, and Randy. Thank you for your speech tonight. I would like to evaluate this speech better than all the previous contestants. I want to talk about 3 things: performance, writing, and effectiveness. First of all, performance. This speech was extremely good if you're on this side of the room, because the speaker was on this side of the room, favoring all of us. I was back here on this side. People on this side didn't get to see as much of you. So I would encourage you to be more mindful of location. And in fact, when you plan your speech, Randy, I'd suggest you figure out, where am I starting, where am I finishing, and where am I moving? Do a little choreography, because as you pivot to one section of your speech to another, that's when movement can be very effective. Lets you connect with the audience, they see the movement happening, and then there's something different being talked about. But otherwise, the performance of voice, variety, humor, audience involvement was a bit theatrical, and I think it worked really well, and everyone was well entertained. But I'm not sure this was an entertaining speech project that you're working on. The writing of this speech felt like it wasn't a first draft, but it might be a second draft. And in good writing, it's the 4th and 5th and 6th drafts, I think, where you really get effective. I would encourage you to rehearse this speech aloud, perhaps record it, get feedback from some people, because sometimes the way things read on the page and the way they come to the ear are a little different. And I think in particular here, there were some elements of the speech that struck me as odd. There were going to be 3 key elements. I counted 4, made notes of 4. But there were also going to be 3 skills, and I never heard them talked about at all. Where were the 3 skills, and what were they? So in editing and rehearsing more, you're going to catch those things, or listeners or your recording device are going to catch them for you. The next area I want to get to connects with the writing, and that's the effectiveness of the speech. The takeaway for an audience member, what was the speech about? It was about laughing, it was about standing up, and it was about a bunch of things, some of which came at us very rapid fire in the beginning. And sometimes the middle-aged ear needs a little more time to hear and absorb and soak that up. Good points. But I wondered, is this your experience? Is this someone else's experience? And what am I supposed to take away and learn from this to be better at running a meeting or better at attending a meeting? It was fuzzy for me. So the advice I would give you is when you write and rewrite your speech, read through it very carefully. Find the best paragraph. Maybe that should be your ending. Find your second best one. Open with that. And then look in that opening for words that can be your title and get a better connected title, opening, conclusion. Great speech. Loved the entertainment. Thank you very much.
I will ask that everyone in the room remain silent until Carol Dyte has left the room.